Every Olympic Games gives us champions, gold medalists, world records, sporting perfection. But every now and then, the Games gives us something else entirely. Someone who doesn't win. Someone who doesn't even come close and yet somehow becomes unforgettable. Now, today's guest did exactly that. In 1988, at the Winter Olympics in Calgary, a British ski jumper took to the slopes with no funding, no coach, thick glasses, borrowed equipment, and absolutely no expectation of winning. He finished last, twice, and became one of the most famous Olympians of all time. Eddie the Eagle Edwards wasn't only Britain's first Olympic ski jumper, he became a symbol of what Olympics are supposed to be about. Courage over comfort, participation over perfection, dreams over medals. At a time when Britain had no ski jumping program, Eddie trained alone. He paid his own way, he slept wherever he could, and he jumped anyway, and crowds loved him. Fellow athletes respected him, and officials, well, different story. They rewrote the rules, so much so that qualification standards were tightened afterwards in what became the Eddie the Eagle rule. Now today, nearly 4 decades on, it raises the big question, would Eddie even be allowed to compete now? Have the Olympics become too elite, too polished, too perfect to allow stories like this to ever happen again? And what does success in sport really mean? Is it medals? Is it memories? I'm Paul Coyte, and on this episode of Sport on GB News Originals, I'm delighted to be joined by one of British sport's most iconic underdogs and a true Great Britain, in my view, Eddie the Eagle Edwards. How are you, Eddie?
I'm good, thank you very much. That was a lovely intro. I like that.
Well, you are more than welcome, and I believe that. Do you think people...
Oh, thank you.
Do you think people see you differently maybe now than they did back when you were jumping there at Calgary as the mood changed a bit, or not?
I think it has, yeah. More people now look back, especially having seen the film, they look back and think, wow, it was a wonder we ever got there, that resilience, that tenacity, that determination, that never giving up spirit. Whereas when I came back from Calgary immediately, especially with the papers, they were saying, oh, he was a super flop, he was a failure, he shouldn't have been there. And people were influenced by that. So, yes, I think over the last sort of 38 years, attitudes have changed to what I represented at Calgary when I jumped for Great Britain.
Eddie, give me a little bit more background on what happened before then, because you say about tenacity and this never say die attitude. I mean, you came from nowhere to become a British winter sports legend. There's no question about that. So, in a nutshell, how did it actually happen? I know it's a long old story, but give us some sort of idea of the route you took and what you had to go through to get there.
Well, it was a school ski trip when I was 13 years old. I had a local dry ski slope and that became my home. I got into ski racing, doing slalom and giant slalom. Started racing internationally, then went to America, and I ran out of money when I was in Lake Placid, and I saw the ski jumps, and I thought, oh, I'll give it a go, see what happens. And I quite like jumping through the air with skis on anyway. Yeah. And then I found out that Britain have never had a ski jumper before, and I thought, oh, I'll keep going, see what happens. And I managed to get up to the big jumps and qualify for Calgary, and then became Eddie the Eagle, and boom.
I love the way, and when I say like pre-seed version, I mean, it's just like amazing that it's gone from like, well, I did a bit of skiing at school, and before I knew it, then I was up jumping. What's the moment though? There must be a difference. You say you used to like jumping on skis, but when you then go up to that big hill, I mean, must have really been a nerve-wracking moment, because that's a bit different from just jumping off, a hill or just sliding down a mountain to actually go up onto that jump.
That's right, because when I started ski jumping, I started on the 10-meter ski jump, and that was hard enough because that's still about 30, 40 feet. Then I moved very quickly up to the 15-meter. That scared me to death. And then after about an hour, I moved up to the 40-meter, which was even more scary. So from the moment I started ski jumping to the moment I retired, and that was after about 20, 25,000 jumps, I was just as scared to do the last one as I was to do the first one. You never get used to it. But, I overcome that fear by using lots of different techniques. And, I managed to qualify and jump at Calgary. I didn't fall over, didn't break anything. I had broken a few things, but nothing at the Olympic Games. And although it scared me to death, I had an absolute ball. And it was the most exciting thing I've ever done.
What drove you on then, Eddie? Is it because people said no to you? Is it because you had a lot of that, didn't you?
Oh, yes. And I think the biggest thing was defiance, really. I wanted to be the best jumper that I could possibly be. And everybody kept telling me, oh, you're not going to be able to jump off a 30 meter, and then a 40 meter, then a 60 meter, then a 75 meter. And I loved proving people wrong. Ever since I was a little boy, I hated being told that I couldn't do something. And when they kept saying, no, you'll never do that. You'll never jump further than 50 meters or 60 meters. And I was determined to prove them wrong. And it was sheer determination. And as long as I was jumping better today than I was yesterday, I wanted to keep going. I wanted to see how far I could push myself and be the best jumper that I could be. So it was just pure, stubbornness, really.
Yeah. What were the other athletes, like the other jumpers, compared to maybe other members of the British team that were there doing other sports?
At Calgary, all the jumpers were lovely because they said all this attention that was being thrust upon me. Of course, I got christened Eddie the Eagle at Calgary. And
I was tell us that story. So how was it you got christened Eddie the Eagle? Because this is a great story, isn't it?
Well, it's I did an interview with the BBC 2 weeks before Calgary, and I said, I'm Eddie Edwards, and I'm about to be Britain's first ever Olympic ski jumper. And I said, to all you people out there, I asked for sponsorship and you didn't give it to me. I said, I got there without your help. And they sent this interview over to Canada, and they showed it on Canadian television. And then a group of supporters from an oil company in Calgary saw it on Canadian television and christened me Eddie the Eagle. And then I was going through the airport at Calgary for the Olympics, and there was a great big banner on the wall at the airport saying, "Welcome to Calgary, Eddie the Eagle." And I said, "Oh, who's that?" And they said, "It's you." And that was it. I got christened Eddie the Eagle, and I'm so pleased that I got christened. It had nothing whatsoever to do with me. And I think I'll be called Eddie the Eagle for the rest of my life.
It's amazing how you got there, because it's so deserved. Because I think at the time people were just thinking, this guy's turned up and he's just going to jump off this ski jump, and it's all a bit of a laugh. But like you say, you went from being a really great skier, and then you trained and you worked hard and you did all of this stuff on your own. I mean, the story about how you actually found out you were in the British team. Where was it? Were you in Finland at the time?
I was, yes. I was in Finland in a place called Kuopio, and I was training with the Finnish team there. And the cheapest place for me to stay was in a psychiatric hospital, and they were renovating one of the wings of the hospital. Yeah, and I was literally sleeping in a padded cell. And
Wow.
I got the letter. I rang my mum, and she opened the letter, and she said, "Oh my God, you're going to Calgary." And then that was it. I got out of the hospital and I rushed to London to pick up my uniform, and I went to Calgary. So yeah, and I slept in cars and in cow sheds. I scraped food out of bins. I did whatever I could so that I could stay out wherever I was and carry on my ski jumping. And that was the most important thing for me to do.
See, that's the amazing thing, is the dedication. There's so many people. I know how dedicated sports people have got to be to get to the top, but there's always help along the way. And it almost seems like you've had to do it single-handedly. I mean, were there, of course, we look at the film and you've got Hugh Jackman as the coach. Was there a Hugh Jackman, or were there different coaches?
I had about 20 different coaches, but
Right.
Hugh Jackman is largely based on my very first coach. Because I started ski jumping in Lake Placid, my first coach was an American. And he was a great guy, John Viscomi, and he's largely based on him. And then they like the characteristics from some of my other coaches. And so he's like an amalgamation of probably half my coaches. And that was the easiest way, really, to tell the story. And Hugh Jackman played a great part, and Taron Egerton as well. I couldn't believe how much he looked and sounded and acted like me in the film, and they did a wonderful, wonderful job.
Who would have thought the same person that would play Elton John and Eddie the Eagle? Hey, who would ever thought?
I know.
So was the moment that you found out, when you speak to your mum on the phone, because I think there's always a defining moment, not only in athletes' careers, but in anybody, in your whole life. You think that was the turning point. What was it like? Was that one of the great moments when you actually found out that you were going? Because this was the dream.
That's right. It's been a dream of mine since I was about 8 years old to go to an Olympic Games. And I didn't know that I was going to do it ski jumping. And when my mum said, "Oh my God, you are going to the Calgary Winter Olympics," for half a minute, I really wasn't taking it in. I thought, "My God, are you sure? Can you read it again? Are you sure?" And she said, "Yes, you'll go into the Olympic Games," and that was it. The realization of my dream, and then of course going to Calgary and watching the Olympic flame being lit, sitting there in the stadium, and I thought, wow, this is it. And to put on my Olympic uniform for the very first time, it was, everything I dreamed of. And it brought tears to my eyes then, and it still brings tears to my eyes now.
Did you feel part of the team though? Did you feel embraced by the team?
Not really,
Right.
because we were spread out a little bit. There were a number of different athletes' villages, and it was a little bit more difficult. And that's why in the film they pretended to go off and get me drunk, because I think there were some members of the team that didn't like what happened. They said, "I'm better at my sport than Eddie is at his. Why is he getting all this attention?" And of course, it was only because I got christened Eddie the Eagle, and it just exploded and caught everybody's imagination. So there was a little bit of animosity with some of the members of the team, but I tried not to let that affect me. I just carried on doing what I needed to do, and that was train to, do my ski jumping. I did want to hurt myself at Calgary, and I had to train very hard to make sure I didn't fall over and break anything on such a spectacle, a sporting spectacle.
Tell me about the day of the first jump then. So how was that? Because there must have been, at this point, there was a lot of attention around you, right? Or was it only after those jumps?
It was during the first jump. In fact, my first time on the ski jumps, my bindings had broken on the flight up to Calgary, and I had to borrow a pair of skis from the Austrian team. And I've
got to stop. These are the bits. This is what attaches your boot to the skis, right?
Yes, that's right. And I couldn't use my skis, and the Austrian team said, we've got a couple of spare pairs, and they put them up for me. And so it was very strange because they weren't like my normal bindings, and so they were it was something very new to me. And then I already missed 2 training jumps, so I got 1 training jump going into the competition. And then that was it. The small hill was okay, but the attention was building for the big hill, and it was windy at Calgary. They kept cancelling the training sessions because of the high winds. And then they thought, oh, maybe Eddie shouldn't jump because it's too dangerous. But to the jump on the big hill in front of 82,000 people in the stadium, it was just incredible. The noise from the crowd was amazing. And it's something that will stay with me forever. It was a great. They were all shouting Eddie, Eddie, and it was just incredible.
So when you're up there, is it because you say you could hear, but it's so high up, and if anybody's never been onto the top of a ski jump, I've been up there and I took the lift down. And by the way, Eddie, is that it's so high up, and there's just silence, isn't there? And is that what happens when you actually start the jump? All of a sudden, everything becomes quiet. What do you hear? Is it just wind, or you can hear the noise, or all of a sudden you just hit the air and then it's just nothing?
Well, I can hear the crowd when I'm sitting there on the bench getting ready to go.
But the moment you start, is that a good thing, or does that make you feel even worse?
Oh, it's incredible, because that inspired me. I wanted to jump for them, and I wanted to get a new British record and jump as far as I possibly could for the audience, for the crowd. And so that kind of spurred me on. And, I sat on that bar. Then I got the wave from the American coach to say it's safe, off you go. And I came down. But the moment you leave that bar, within 2 seconds, you're doing 60 miles an hour. And then you can just feel the wind and hear the wind coming through your helmet. And so then it just becomes, concentrate on the takeoff, coming to the takeoff and diving out over your skis and flying through the air. So for about 3 seconds while I'm flying through the air, all I'm thinking about is my technique and trying to land on my feet. And then when I land, and the whole crowd went nuts, and that's when I heard all the crowd again. So for those seconds, it's kind of just the wind, going through your helmet, and you can hear it in your ears, and it helps you to concentrate.
But hasn't there been a time where, because you had glasses on, right? So they steam up?
Yeah. Oh, they did all the time. But they didn't at Calgary, because I got up to the top of the ski jump quite early. So I had time for my body heat to cool down. But generally, when I'm doing my training in some competitions, when I was a bit late getting up to the top of the jump and I was still hot, the last thing I did when I leave the bar is bring my goggles down over my glasses, because the moment I did that, my glasses would steam up. But then I would start coming down the jump, and then the air would flow through my goggles and clear my glasses. But about 3 or 4 jumps in every 10, they didn't. So I was actually taking off, and my glasses were totally steamed up. I couldn't see where the landing hill is. And while I'm flying through the air, I had to stick my finger up and try and clear some of the steam off my glasses.
My goodness. Just thought of it as you're flying along. But straight afterwards then, now the reaction from the world was just crazy, wasn't it? I mean, you're a very level-headed man, and the time that I've known you, how anybody can actually keep it together from what you've gone through and the whole world knew you. How do you deal with that? And tell us some of the things that happened straight afterwards.
Well, during Calgary, I got invited to go down to do the Johnny Carson show with Burt Reynolds. And I didn't realize that the Johnny Carson show was like the biggest show in America at the time. And I went down there, and then all of a sudden I went into the green room. I met Burt Reynolds, and we sat and chatted for about 4 hours before the show. And he was the loveliest guy. And it was just lovely getting all this attention from everybody. They were really lovely and saying, "Oh, we love what you did at Calgary. We loved everything you represent at the Olympic Games, and well done," and all that thing. And I was getting all this love and support, and it was just lovely. And it's been like that for the last 38 years, really. And I've opened shopping centres, golf courses, fun rides, all kinds of hospitals, hotels. I've done lots of TV shows and radio shows all over the world, and I've met some amazing people. And, if I could live the last 38 years all over again, I would do exactly the same. It's been absolutely incredible.
Wasn't it the closing ceremony? That was really special, wasn't it, at Calgary?
Yes, because I went into the closing ceremony. It's a stadium. There was 80,000 people in the stadium, and the Olympic president stood up and said people had set new goals and set new records, and some have even flown like an eagle. And then all of a sudden, the whole stadium all shouted, "Eddie, Eddie," and they went crazy. And I wasn't expecting that at all, but it was absolutely incredible. And still makes my the hairs on the back of my neck stand out on end. It was so special.
It's fantastic. But the thing is that you're always going to have those people that are always sneering, or he's this, he's that. But it was the authorities, wasn't it? It was like the skiing federation. Who were the ones that were the real stick in the muds and the ones that were causing you problems?
Yeah, the jumpers were loving it. It was just some of the federations, like the Norwegian Ski Federation, they said in Norway, we have 50,000 Eddie the Eagles. We don't send them to the Olympic Games. Yeah. And then they complained to Feast because I was getting an awful lot of attention, more than the guys who were winning competitions. And Feast then brought out a new rule, which effectively kicked me out of the sport. They kicked me out of the World Cup, the Olympics, the British Ski Federation kicked me off the British team. They said, "We don't like what's happening. You're making a mock of the sport and bringing the sport into disrepute." And so they literally, my wings were clipped, and I wasn't able to carry on ski jumping, which is incredibly short-sighted of them, really.
Well, I was going to say, without making a pun, it's incredibly short-sighted because everybody was looking at ski jumping. Everybody was into ski jumping. You were probably getting people involved in the sport, so many more people watching it, and they're literally cutting off their nose to spite their face to do it because they're so hoity-toity about the whole situation. What about over here, though? Skiing here surely embraced you, right?
No, they didn't actually. The British Ski Federation, they didn't like what happened at Calgary. So they kicked me off the team. And then that was it, really. It was awful. The British Olympic Association didn't like what happened at the Olympic Games. They felt I didn't deserve that attention. And so, when Feast said that they were going to change the rules, the British Ski Federation and the British Olympic Association didn't do anything to stop them, because they thought, okay, let's do it. Because they were just as embarrassed as, some of the other federations. And it was awful. And it was a shame because the British Ski Federation have never had an athlete with such a high profile at the time. And I could have helped promote skiing and ski jumping around the UK, and I would have been quite happy to do it. But they said, no, go away. We don't like it.
So what's the Eddie the Eagle rule then? What exactly is that?
The rule is that if you're an athlete and you want to go to the Olympic Games, you've got to be ranked in the top 50 in the world at your sport.
Right.
Or it used to be you've got to be placed in the top 50%, but I think they've dropped it now to the top 30% of an international competition. So you've got to get in in the top 30 in the 30% in the results. And at the time, that was very, very difficult. very difficult. And that was so they didn't ban me directly. They banned me indirectly by bringing out that new rule because I couldn't reach the top 30% of an international competition.
They tried a couple of things, didn't they? Didn't they make it a distance after Calgary, and then you kept jumping, and then they say, right, this is the distance you've got to get to, and you do it. So then they make it further, and then you do it again.
That's right. And they did that before Calgary as well, because in the film, they moved the goalpost once. But in reality, before Calgary, they moved the goalpost 4 times. But I still managed to reach the qualification and go to Calgary. But then after Calgary, I think they kind of literally doubled the distance, and it made it almost impossible. So that was also another. And also because if you want to get in the top 30% of an international competition, you would have to jump, at least 50 meters further. And, I was a beginner at ski jumping. I'd only been jumping for 22 months,
Let's get this straight. So you've been jumping for 20 months. You've got ski jumpers from around the world that have been jumping all their life. So then they grew up on skis. So they spent their whole life jumping. Were they amazed that you could actually do what you did at all in the short space of time?
They were, because, I was standing at the top of a 90 meter, and some of the Germans and the Austrians were saying, well, after 15 months, 20 months, we were still on the 30 meter ski jump. It took us 5, 6, even 10 years to get up to the top of a 90 meter. And there I was at the top of the 90 meter after only sort of 15 months. In fact, my first 90 meter I did was after about 6 months. So they said, oh my God, you shouldn't really be up here. But they were quite impressed, but very nervous for me as well. They said it's very dangerous, so be careful.
The whole Olympic spirit, and this is what we're talking about today, is the whole point of it. It's supposed to be all embracing. It's entertainment for everybody. Everybody feels something from it. There's more than just competition, is there? There's so much more to the whole thing. And you embodied the whole of that. So has it sort of come full circle? Because aren't you even in now the Olympic Museum, which I think is really important and almost says, yes, Eddie Eagle, you are an Olympian and you deserve to be amongst everybody else.
Yes, I was very surprised, actually, that the Olympic Museum, I didn't even know there was an Olympic Museum. And they invited me over to Lausanne, and I donated some of my uniform and some of my equipment. And they said, oh, no, you're part of Olympic history, and you will always be part of Olympic history. And we loved what you did, and you exemplified that Olympic ideal, and they were just as proud of me taking part as other people. So yeah, even authorities have changed their attitude, having looked back on what I did and things, and they realised that for me, just getting to those Olympic Games was my gold medal, and I was going to enjoy every second of it, and I think people appreciated that. And I'll probably donate more of my uniform and all my Olympic uniform probably to the Lausanne Olympic Museum in the future.
What a place for it to be, and there's some steamed up glasses as well in there too. But yes. but finally, the British Federation, is there a picture of you now? There should be a huge picture at the top of the stairs of you. Did they finally come round and say, Eddie, we're sorry?
I don't even know where the building, the Federation building, is now. They've moved it all over the place. If there is a picture,
just trying to get away from you, and that's probably what it is.
It's probably in the downstairs loo. So every time they go to the loo and do a pee, they'll see my face and they'll think, "Oh my word, who's that?"
But also, you should have jumped on. It should have continued, because you did get better and better and better, didn't you?
I did, yeah. When I was training for the 98 Olympics, at Calgary, I was doing, I think, 55 meters on the small hill and about 71 meters on the big hill. But when I was training for Nagano, I was averaging about 90 meters on the small hill and about 110, 115 meters on the big hill. So I actually got quite good at ski jumping, just nobody ever got to see it, because even though I reached the qualification, they said, no, we're not sending you to Nagano. So I retired and went back to school and retired from competitive ski jumping.
I've got to say, Eddie, and I've always said this, and even going back to 88 and seeing you do that, and I thought you were a hero, and I really hated the way that some people would then it just seemed cheap to make jibes at you. And I think since then, since people have seen the film and people now know the truth and everything you went through and how good a skier you were, I think finally, after all this time, you're getting the recognition you deserve, because you are a true Olympic hero in my eyes. And it's always good to speak to you. And we really appreciate your time. You're going to enjoy the Winter Olympics.
I will. I might go to Milan next week to do a talk at a conference while I'm there, and I'll try and watch a little bit. But it's really nice that people have still embraced me and loved everything I did and represented all those years ago, and they can still remember everything I did. So it's really, really nice, and I'm very grateful that I get that appreciation. It's lovely.
And if they said to you, look, Eddie, there's some skis, we've got some nice bindings for you. What about getting back in the gang again and going up on the top of the 90 metre? Would you give it a go?
Oh, absolutely. I would. You would rush up that top of that jump, put them on and get jumping. And I'd still want to jump the furthest I've ever jumped before. That's always in me, and I'll always be like that. I've probably got another 10 years of jumping left in me, and I want to try and do some more jumping if I can.
I reckon at least. And we'll be right behind you. Eddie, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Great to speak to you.
No worries.